Good evening. Now, I said I wasn't going to do one of these, didn't I? Because I have a sort of reading challenge on at work where I have to read a certain amount of books to demonstrate to year 8 that you can set your goals high for such things. However, it's half term and I finished the book I was supposed to be reading for this, which is this marvellous book, 7 Letter Word by Kim Slater, which you should definitely read if you've got, well, a young person in your life might want to read. I finished that within 3 days. And I also read this, which is a fantastic comic, which is delving into metafiction, which we need to lean into in just a second, which I recommend. It's Ex Libris by Matt Madden. A bit more expensive, but if you can find a copy of that, it's well worth reading. So what do? I go to the shelves and find a Doctor Who book that I can quiz. Don't tell year 8 because I'm trying to suggest that there's a race on, but honestly, I've got this. I've nailed this. So I went to the shelves and I found myself a book, and what leapt into my hands? It has to be a book that I can quiz on this accelerated reader thing that we do at school. And I got this. So this is The Stealers of Dreams by Steve Lyons, one of the Ninth Doctor adventures. But the reason I was drawn to this book is because if you read on the back, it says it's a crime to tell stories, in this particular word, a crime to lie, a crime to hope, and a crime to dream. The Doctor is forced to admit that fiction can be dangerous after all. Well, I mean, come on. If I'm in the middle of a reading challenge, then something that's delving into the world of fiction and Doctor Who related is a gimme, isn't it? So Steve Lyons. Steve Lyons is an author who, for me, he doesn't feature in my memory, so I had to go to the shelves and work out what's my connection with Steve Lyons. Well, he did Cold It's, which is one of the first Big Finish audios I ever listened to. I think Paul bought me that as a birthday present once. Absolutely fantastic. David Tennant's in that as well. And then I went a little bit further back and I realised that Steve Lyons has not only written Conundrum, which is one of the highest, really highly ranked new adventures, but he wrote this one, Head Games, which I've read twice in my life. And the first time I read it, seemed to recall enjoying it. It's got Mel in it, screaming. A really weird version of Mel, actually. But the irony is that the second time I read it, I think I was sat in this very room as I read it, it's got moments in Sheffield. And not only that, the moments that are set in Sheffield, the scenes in Sheffield are so easy for me to visualise because I've walked that street a billion times. Anyway, so Steve Lyons, what a legend. Knows Sheffield well, clearly. So I read Stealers of Dreams. I've absolutely loved this book. I know this is boring. I come on here every time that you watch one of these videos, the 3.5 of you that watch these videos, and I say how much I've loved this book. But I've really, really enjoyed this book. And I've really enjoyed this book for a couple of reasons. Our main characters here, Jack, Rose and the Doctor, are captured perfectly. I'm really impressed with the way that Steve Lyons has captured Eccleston's patterns of speech, the way that he talks. There's one point where he repeats the phrase, not your fault. Not your fault, not your fault. And the use of Rose Tyler. He calls her Rose Tyler all the time. It's so easy to hear Eccleston saying these lines. And I think Jack's a great addition to these books because Jack can do the sort of running around actiony bit that don't really befit Eccleston's Doctor. I do think that Jack is a great addition to that TARDIS team, even though the dynamic of the Doctor and Rose is absolutely integral to the story that goes across that season, but it does work really, really well. The other really big selling point of this book is the fact that when you read the back and you hear of a world that has banned fiction and you cannot dream and you cannot lie, as a Doctor Who fan, you kind of think immediately, well, obviously the Doctor's going to come down and sort that out, isn't he? Because that's not acceptable. Can't be doing that. We like fiction. Fiction is a good thing. And that would obviously be, a fine direction for a book like this to take. But Steve Lyons does something way more interesting with it. So even though things do get tied up, and I have to say they get tied up at the end beautifully well. I mean, I marvel all the times at writers generally. But obviously I marvel at Doctor Who writers because, it'd be very easy to suggest that Doctor Who writers who aren't household names or anything like that, the ones who don't write for the TV programme, you could think of it as a secondary gig, but it's not, because the joy that comes through these stories is just so infectious and beautiful and brilliant. And sometimes you get the ones that are a bit like, auteurs like your Lawrence Miles and people like that who've got a clear vision. And then you get people who just can tell a brilliantly fine story. And Steve Lyons is telling a brilliantly fine story. And like I say, the way that everything wraps up so beautifully at the end, even to the extent that, and I flipping love this, and obviously I can't tell you, but one of the characters that we've spent a lot of time with throughout the book, at the end, you get a bit of revelation, which I suspected halfway through. But at the end, the way that it drops is just so perfect. And anyway, the morality of this story, so even though it wraps up beautifully at the end, the morality of this story is really, really interesting, because like I say, you think as a Doctor Who fan that you're going to be going, well, the Doctor's going to sort this out. But it's much more interesting and complicated than just saying naughty government, or not government, you will read the book, but naughty police state, naughty, ethics of this society saying that fiction is bad. But in actual fact, it's much more nuanced than that. And I suppose the lesson you take away that fiction is powerful, and dreams are powerful and necessary, but deserve to be treated with respect. And it's just absolutely fabulous. There's some great sequences in the book. Like I said, the voices are captured beautifully well. There's a particular moment I read yesterday whilst waiting for the dog to get groomed, where Rose is having a moment of paranoia. And we've all had moments of paranoia, some more so than others. But there was this particular moment I really resonated with, and I really felt those sorts of feelings of you're not sure where the threat's coming from. Is there a threat? I don't know, all that kind of thing. There's another absolutely fantastic moment with Rose where things aren't quite as she seems with the company that she's keeping. And as a reader, you know that things aren't quite right, but you're like, Rose, just wake up to it. Jack's brilliant throughout the book, doing the Jack thing, that sort of confidence and bravado, which it drops beautifully in this world. He's got a real role to play here, especially towards the end where he does all the action hero things. And then Eccleston's Doctor is brilliantly Eccleston's Doctor. Sometimes grumpy, sometimes, joyous at the little things in the world. And it's just really, 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 really good for a book that I literally just picked up because I needed something to read and I wanted to be able to quiz it and trying to read as many books as I can for no discernible reason. It was an absolute delight. So seriously, for an era of Doctor Who, again, I think that sometimes this era gets, the potential of this era is almost a given. You sort of take it for granted. But we could have had story after story after story with Eccleston and Rose, and Jack could have come back and it would have been awesome. And that could have gone on and on. And this really would have made for a great story. Really interesting. Just the plotting of it is just a joy to behold. The other thing I like, this is a little thing. This seems obvious, but I love the way that Steve Lyons has characters from one subplot crop up in the other subplot and that subplot, and it never feels forced, and he sort of marshals his cast of characters really, really well so that they all get sufficient time to exist on the pages as characters in their own right, but they're also sort of bouncing off of, that sounds daft. I'm in awe of writers. I really am in awe of writers. I wish I had the ideas. I've always said I've got the words, but I just don't have the ideas. And my gosh, people, look at these. Steve Lyons wrote 3 cracking Doctor Who books. I can barely write a cracking Doctor Who sentence. I've talked gibberish for less than 9 minutes about Doctor Who. God, what am I? Anyway, there we go. So listen, pick it off my shelf, just read it. I absolutely love this book. I think that it's breezy but gripping. There's always something going on. And like I say, just as I was, it's quite late now and I'm thinking, I'm going to settle down for bed. And this little twist at the end, very nice, very nice. Anyway, there we go. Enjoyed.